Greetings everyone, welcome back to Nick's Mods. This time a mod I'd left in the shop for years and thought I might never finish, only recently doing it just in time to get some of these shots before selling my Alpha Team Mission Deep Sea collection. I didn't realize covering the themes in their respective episodes on LEGO Rewind until I had both in hand years later, but Alpha Team Mission Deep Sea is really Aquazone. It's just more of the same. Alpha Team itself feels like a third iteration of the Aquanauts and Hydronauts, while Ogo's builds channel both the Stingrays and Aqua Sharks. I even sort of acknowledged this in the Aquazone episode by pointing out similarities between these two builds. And that gave me a few ideas, like how to convert one of Mission Deep Sea's most underrated builds into something more naughty. Behold the Sea Strider, named after another big-footed stompy creature from planet Darwin 4. This doesn't walk on water though, it lumbers along the ocean floor, partly aided by all those propellers searching for hydrocrystals. So how'd this thing come to be? In my headcanon, Alpha Team is an indirect prequel to Aquazone. The technology used by the team and Ogo later developed over decades or centuries and used by the Aquanauts and other factions, mainly those arms. The ratcheted 2002 arms are great fun, durable, powerful looking, and decently articulated, but clunky and primitive in the Aquazone. Like many technologies that become smaller and more efficient over time, these arms grew thinner and more flexible, sacrificing some power to create less drag and reach into smaller places. This makes the Sea Strider something of a holdover in universe, a dinosaur based on very old designs. But that's just the narrative I've created. In real life, I bought a second Alpha Team Aquatic mech, which was unnecessary as I eventually replaced every single element. Well, almost. I think these pin plates might still be original. But I really did ship a Theseus this one. Slowly. Using some Aquazone pieces I already had, I built a few structures that would later be incorporated into the mod, just to visualize it. Returned those pieces to their sets of origin and bricklinked a bunch more. I'm especially proud of the slanted pillars being so flush with the propeller housing, creating a more continuous, dynamic shape. It just screams forward, as if the pointed arrows typical of sets of the time didn't already. The ladders and storage compartments are still there, but a bit more compact, and I managed to squeeze in other places for minifigs to grab and store items. These slopes made the perfect toes with that splash of blue. This printed opaque blue wasn't as big a part of the Hydronauts' identity as Dark Trends blue was for the earlier Aquanauts, but it's important enough that I had to include all three variants. These chromed headlights were scattered across a few dozen sets in several old themes, but none featured them so prominently as the Hydronauts, so these were a must too. The tadpole-like bubble design included in every Hydronaut set and some Stingray sets was also essential. And as big and blocky as this black chunk is, it's an easy base to build around. I included two unhoused propellers on more sloped pillars flush with the back, and one with black housing. 5 propellers so close together may sound excessive for a build that isn't that big, but 3 of them are for the top half to float around without legs, making it feel like an upgraded version of the solo sub. The gimmicks still don't stop, with a compass and storage for 2 Hydronauts worth of backpacks and harpoon guns. Not only does this continue the play pattern of official Hydronaut sets, but pointed backwards, these lights, blasters, look like 4 additional thrusters, adding up to 9 points of propulsion. I prefer setting them like this, which does make the inner 2 a bit low, just barely overlapping with the middle propeller. But there is an extra row of half anti-studs to rest them in, which clutch surprisingly fine and I guess are more accessible to the Hydronauts. Now about those arms. As I switched out more and more parts, I actually tried to keep the bulkier ratcheted arms, partly for the lore implications of some parts of this machine still being so ancient, and partly because after replacing everything else, I kinda felt bad for wasting a perfectly good Alpha Team Aquatic mech that someone else could have bricklinked or eBayed and enjoyed, and felt keeping those would make it not a total waste. But eventually I realized that for this to feel like an authentic Aquazone set, something that could have been released in 1998, those 2002 parts had to go. Now it has those classic Aquazone noodle arms, which are used a lot less in the later waves, so I feel this balances things out. They're just long enough to reach crystals on the ground, and comically long in solo sub mode. One arm ends with a classic claw, and the other a drill inspired by the Aqua Raiders from Aquazone's middle, chrome-tipped drill bit and all. But in a model where I slavishly try to stick to 90s molds, even opting for the Technic tubes that don't have a gap in the middle, attaching this drill is the one area where I cheated, using the only modern part just the right length to make this connection, an axle pin hybrid from 2015. Yeah, I'll see myself out. If someone comes up with a more retro connection that looks the same, let me know. I could attach a plunger here, but then it feels like just a walking version of the crystal detector. Alternatively, I could switch it for a normal pin and just leave out the front part, making it this circular thing. There's a lot of different attachments you could put here, and I like the idea of the Sea Strider being that versatile in universe. Aside from that, this is a pretty authentic Aquazone build. It may be my most extensive mod ever, barely retaining any of the original build and crossing into straight up mock territory. The illusion is so airtight, it's a thrill to expand the Hydronaut fleet, which is slightly more limited than the Aquanauts. I think that's probably why this group is more overlooked. I said this wave wasn't all that special visually in the Aquazone Rewind, but in hand, I think it's fantastic. Maybe even better than the Aquanauts. It's this wave that convinced me Aquazone is a space sub-theme, just set on Europa or an alien ocean world, and I hope this mod captures that, as much as was sacrificed for the illusion. It's also just kinda crazy to see a 2000 set, part of LEGO's huge push with all their new, curvier pieces, translate so well to all the pieces that gave old Millennium themes like Aquazone their identity and were purged. You wouldn't think something could make the jump so well that it looks like a long-lost set, and I can't believe I sat on it for 2 or 3 years before giving it those iconic Aquazone noodle arms. That's it for today. Check out my books on Amazon and itch.io, and my Patreon page to get videos like this early, your name in the credits, behind the scenes content, a patron Discord server, signed copies of Planet Ripple, and maybe even your own LEGO Rewind episode. See you next mod. Toodles!